things off on a Sunday afternoon, we look down at Queen Jack of Diamonds in the big blind. The action folds around to a player in the low jack who goes ahead and bumps it up. He makes it 15 to go. Jack thinks 15 is a pretty fair price. He goes ahead and puts in the call. The cutoff, however, is taking a little bit long to make his action. The button is noticeably annoyed that the cutoff is taking so long. Eventually the cutoff does fold though, and the button calls. Small blind gets out of there, and I go ahead and put in the call, and we're going to go 4 ways to a flop. Flop comes down Jack 10-4 rainbow, giving us top pair with a pretty decent kicker, and I start things off with a check. Additional razor in the low jack checks, the high jack checks, and the button checks, so showing a lot of weakness here when we go to a turn, which is the 9. With all this checking going on the flop, I think we've got the best hand, and I think we want to start betting the best hand. I lead out here for 30 on the turn. The original razor in the low jack puts in the call, and everyone else folds, so we go to a river which is a 6 of hearts. A pretty safe river to me to keep betting for some value, so I fire out here for 60 on the river. Low jack looks a little perplexed by the bet, but he folds anyway, so it doesn't really matter in the end. We take down this first one to get the night started on Sunday. All right, before we get started with this hand, I want to let you all know that I checked with the punt police on this, and this is a clear violation of lighting money on fire. So do not do this. Do not do this, or you will be charged. You will be penalized by the poker gods. I've got Jack 9 of diamonds on the button. Action folds to me, and I go ahead and raise it up. I make it 15 to go. Small blind quickly folds, but the big blind does not. The big blind looks like he's got some ill intent in his mind as he starts to count out more chips, so he's definitely going to be putting in the 3-bet here. He goes with the 3x sizing to $45, which makes me think that he's probably not all that strong here, and he's just making a move. I think if he really had a hand, he would go a little bit larger, especially out of position. So I put in the call, and we're going to go heads up to a flop in a 3-bet pot. And the flop does give us some possibilities. We see 8-7-5 rainbow with 1 diamond, so we've got straight draw possibilities. We've got a backdoor flush draw. Any 10 or any 6 is going to give us a straight, and if we turn a diamond, we're going to pick up more equity. The big blind does not slow down. He continues to fire, but it's a small sizing. He goes with $40 on this flop. Now here is where I think I make the biggest blunder in this hand. I think I should be raising on this flop. I think I can represent more of the sets, more of the 2 pair hands, but I just call and we go to a turn, which is the deuce of spades, which doesn't improve my hand, but it shouldn't improve the big blind too often either. Big blind doesn't seem too concerned that that card should not have improved him though, because he continues to fire, and he fires for about a full pot size bet here of $150 on the turn, which puts me in a gross spot. We didn't pick up any additional equity on the turn in the form of a diamond, but we still have our outs to the straight. However, we're not getting a great price to call here. He bet almost full pot. We got about a 16% chance to hit. I think I either have to bluff or fold here. He doesn't have enough behind to really make it a profitable bluff, so I just go ahead and fold. I don't recommend this line at home. This is a surefire line to light money on fire. Let's see if we can not light money on fire in this hand. We've got ace-10 of clubs. We're in the low jack. I go ahead and bump it up to 15. The hijack folds, the cutoff folds, and the button folds. The small blind does not fold. He puts in the call, and the big blind gets out of there. So we're going to go heads up here in position to a flop. Now, usually when small blind calls, it's usually a tighter range. They're usually going to have some pocket pairs like 9s and 8s and 7s, and they're going to have some Broadway cards like King, Queen, Ace, Queen, etc. So I'm keeping that in mind when we see a flop of Queen 6-5 with 2 clubs. Small blind pretty quickly checks, and I fire out a continuation bet of 15, and he also pretty quickly folds. So I guess that whole range analysis didn't mean much. He didn't have anything, and we take down a small one there with our flopped nut flush draw. In this one, we find ourselves with Queen 10 of hearts in the small blind, and we see a raise from a player in middle position. He's in the low jack. He makes it 20 to go. The action folds around to me, and I go ahead and put in the call. I want to see a flop with this hand. Big blind wants to see a flop too. He puts in the call, and we're going to go 3 ways stuck in between 2 opponents here. Let's see if we can't connect. We do connect on a Queen Jack 5 board, but it is a pretty wet, dynamic board. We've got straight draws, we've got flush draws, we've got cards that could change the nuts on the turn like any king or any ace. So we have to play our hand a little bit cautiously, and I start things off with a check. Low jack does not start things off with a check. He fires out for 35. No one likes a nit, so I go ahead and put in the call. Turn is the 5 of spades, which not only pairs the board, it also completes the front door flush. So when I check, LoJack pretty much snap checks back and we go to a river. When LoJack snap checked on the turn, I think he's got a one pair hand that's not too happy with that spade on the turn. So I thought about bluffing river if we get a safe, clean river. I think there's a lot of hands that we could potentially get him to fold if he just got top pair with no spade, or he's got a pair with no spade, or overcards with no spade. We certainly can get him off of those types of hands. But unfortunately, the river did not cooperate with us. We saw the 4 of spades peel off, which puts 4-liner to a flush. I just don't think we're going to get him to fold many hands in this spot, so I end up checking. After we put in the check, the LoJack goes into the tank for a little bit, thinking about whether or not he can profitably bet on this river. He eventually comes to the conclusion that he cannot, and he just knuckles it and checks back. I say I have a queen. He shows 2 red kings, so we probably could have got a bluff through on that river had we gone for it. This is what poker players would affectionately refer to as no set, no bet. We've got pocket 7s and we see an early position raise to 20, and I go ahead and put in the call from the cutoff. Button folds, small blind puts in the call, and the big blind gets out of the way. So we're going to go 3 ways here to a flop, which comes down king, king, 9. Small blind starts things off with a check, and the original raiser in early position does not check. He fires out a continuation bet, and I just snap fold here. However, I think I could have made a play here with my pocket 7s. Let me know what you guys think if there's room there to maneuver with a hand like pocket 7s. Fast forward to Friday night, and we have ace king of spades in the small blind. Such a pretty hand. I just had to share it with all of you. We see a middle position player raise it up to 15. The action is now on me, and you know I'm going to be putting in that nice little 3-bet. I make it 65 to go. Big blind quickly gets out of the way, and the action is now over to our friend in middle position. And this puts our player in middle position into the tank. He is thinking about this for quite some time. He starts counting out calling chips, and then he's looking at his stack like he's contemplating on putting in the 4-bet. If you put in the 4-bet, sir, I think we're going to have to go with it here. I don't think I can fold a hand as pretty as ace king of spades for 100 big blinds. I think we got to roll with it. He eventually comes to a conclusion, though, that there are better spots, and he lets his hand go, and we end up taking this one down pre-flop. All right, this time we've got a suited ace. We've got ace 8 of hearts, and we are in the cutoff. We see an early position raise to 15. I put in the $15 call. The button folds, small blind folds, big blind's going to come along for the ride. He puts in the call. So 3 ways here to a flop. It's an ace high flop, which is a good one because we've got an ace, although our kicker is a little bit suspect. Big blind starts things off with a check, and the original raiser checks. I go ahead and check, so it checks around, and we see the 10 of diamonds on the turn. Big blind checks again, and now the original raiser decides to take a stab at it. He fires out for $15 on the turn, which is a pretty small bet. Definitely think we have to call here, so that's what I do, and the big blind folds off to a river. The river's an interesting one. It's an ace, giving us 3 of a kind, and the early position player doesn't slow down. He fires out another bet, although a very small bet of $15 on the river. I, of course, have to raise here and get some value with our 3 of a kind, so I announce a raise to 55, and now the action is back over to our friend in the under the gun spot, who goes into the tank. But here's the thing. I've seen him now for the past hour and a half, 2 hours that I've been playing at the table with him, tank in just about every spot. So he seems to really be deliberate and like to think through all of his decisions before making an action. And I think this might be a good habit to get into. I find myself making decisions too quickly sometimes in spots where when I look back, I think to myself, you know what, if I would have thought it through, thought about my opponent's range, thought about what I'm targeting or how I want to proceed, I might have come to a better decision. So while it can be annoying and a little bit frustrating when players tank like this at the table, I don't necessarily hate it either, because I think you can be a little bit more deliberate sometimes in your thinking. But that said, I sometimes wish we had like a 30-second or 45-second shot clock at the table in order to keep tanking to a minimum. Eventually he does just fold and we move on to the next hand. He probably could have got there 10, maybe 15 seconds sooner, but what are you going to do? He took his time, he made the right decision, and he folded. All right, I get a little bit crazy with this one. I get a little aggressive. I've got king, jack of diamonds. I'm in the under the gun +1 spot. We see a raise from the under the gun player. He makes it 15 to go. I bump it up and announce a raise to 45. This gets everybody else out of the pot, and the action folds back around to the player in the under the gun position. He goes into the tank for a little bit, but not too egregious, not like the previous tank that we saw. He just thinks about it for a little bit here before settling on a call. So we're going to end up going heads up here in a 3-bet pot, in position. Let's see what we can get on this flop. And we do catch a little something on the flop. It's King 8 deuce, giving us top pair with a pretty decent kicker. Not the greatest, but not the worst. Player in the under the gun spot checks, and now the action is on me, and I think a bet is in order. I think a down bet is the right move here, something around 35 to maybe 40% pot, and I settle on a sizing of $45. Now, I think the under the gun player can have some King X here. He can have hands like King Queen suited. He can have hands like King Jack suited, similar to the hand that I have, or maybe King 10 suited. I think he can have some pocket pairs like pocket 10s and pocket jacks here as well. So when he puts in the call here, we are going to go off to a turn card. I'm keeping that range in mind. And we end up seeing a card on the turn that I think is much better for us than it is for him. It is an ace. When he checks to me here for a second time, considering the range that I had him on, I think a lot of his King X hands are going to hate this turn card. I think a lot of his pocket pairs that he's going to have here are going to hate this turn card. So I think this is a card that we definitely want to keep barreling on. I think I can have just a ton of Ace X in my range, especially since I 3-bet pre-flop. So I start thinking about my sizing, and I decide I want to size up here a little bit and make it a really difficult spot for him to continue. I make it 140 to go, and now the action is back to the player in the under the gun spot. Once the dealer corrects my chip count here, I put $10 too much out there. It's 140, not 150. The player goes into the tank. So he is thinking about it for quite some time here. So now it's his turn to be in the tank. The longer this player tanks, the more I think he might have a King X hand here, and he's thinking about whether or not it still might be good. He could have a hand like pocket queens or pocket jacks, or even a hand like, I don't know, pocket 10s here as well, and he might be thinking about whether or not he should continue. He eventually does let it go, and we end up taking down this pot. Although I'm not sure I love this move now looking back at it. Am I bluffing? Am I value betting? I don't know what the heck I'm doing there on the turn. And I don't know if I like that. I don't know if my thought process was all that good there. But it does work out in the end, and we take down a nice pot. I have been 3-betting more often recently, and this is a spot where I probably would have called in the past. Now I'm 3-betting. We see a raise from the same player as the previous hand. He makes it 15 to go. I 3-bet him again, and I raise it up. I make it 50 to go. Action folds back around to this player, and I think he might be getting a little fed up with my 3-bets. I say that because, as you could probably guess, he's not going to call and he's not going to fold, and that only leaves one option. He's going to put in the old 4-bet. Depending on what sizing he goes with here, it's going to be tough for us to continue. We're just not that deep. He's got maybe about 460 remaining behind. So depending on what his raise is, he's going to have about 300-ish left. He makes it 115 to go, and I just don't think we can continue here profitably. I don't think I can call to set mine. I think going all in would be suicide. I think at best we're going to be flipping against a hand like Ace-King or Ace-Queen. At worst, we're going to be up against a hand like pocket jacks or pocket queens or pocket kings, maybe even pocket aces. So I think based on that assessment, I think it's fine to just fold here and look for a better spot. And that's what I end up doing. I let my cards go, and let's hope we can find a better spot in a future hand. We are downgraded this time to pocket 9s. We're in the big blind, and we see a raise from a player in the hijack who makes it 15 to go. I think I can definitely defend here with a hand like pocket 9s. I go ahead and put in the call, and we go to a flop. Flop is King 7-4 with 2 hearts. I go ahead and start things off with a check, and he checks back really quickly, and we see the 10 of diamonds on the turn. When he checks back this quickly on the flop, I know he's not doing that with the king, especially with the flush draws and straight draws out there. So when he stabs here on this turn card, I think he is full of it, and I put in the call, and we go to a river. River is a 6, which really shouldn't change anything. It does make the board more straighty, but shouldn't be too concerned with it. I check, and he quickly checks back. I announce a pair and turn over the 9s. He says that is good and puts his cards into the muck. And we're going to take down this pot with a little big blind defense. This is going to be the last hand of the session. We've got pocket queens in the cutoff. After this, I get a little frustrated. I start playing poorly. I can feel myself slipping, so I decide to call it a night. I raise it up to 15. Button calls 15. Small blind calls 15. And big blind calls 15. 4 ways to a flop. Not the best flop when you have pocket queens. It's Jack 10-7 with 2 spades. Not loving this spot, but I think I can still continuation bet here and get value from Jack X hands. So when it checks to me, I make it 40 to go. Button quickly gets out of the way, and the small blind pretty quickly gets out of the way as well, and now the action is back over to the big blind. In the moment, I was very hyper-focused on the big blind's body language here as he announces a raise. He goes with a standard 3x sizing here and makes it 120 to go, and now I'm really not loving this spot. I'm thinking back on all the times that I've played pocket queens in multi-way spots where I get check raised, and I'm just never, ever good in these spots. I know I shouldn't let previous outcomes dictate future results, but I just feel like in spots like this, they just raise so often with hands like pocket 10s, pocket 7s, pocket jacks. Even a hand like Jack 10, I think, is going to find a raise here on the flop. I think he's going to call with all of his flush draws, and he's going to call with all of his ace jack, king jack, queen jack type hands. So I just don't love the spot at all. So I decide pretty quickly on getting out of the way. Call me a nit if you'd like, but I go ahead and snap fold here. I just don't think it was a good spot. I feel like I'm going to be beat too often. And I aggressively kind of push the chips towards him, kind of in a tilted manner. Didn't like the fact that I folded here, but at the same time, I think it was the right decision. Let me know in the comments below if you think this was too tight of a fold. I just don't think we're going to be good there too much. So it is what it is. I go ahead and fold, and I played for about another 25 to 30 minutes after this, but I wasn't really feeling it, so I called it a night. That is going to do it for this collection of hands. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you did, please consider hitting that like button. Please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future episodes, and I will see you all in the outro. All right, so that is going to do it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed the hands. I know these were a little bit, I guess you would say, boring hands. And I thought long and hard about whether or not I wanted to release this as an episode of the vlog. I decided to go ahead and release it because when I started doing the vlog, I wanted to create content that was realistic, that portrayed a realistic image of playing live poker on a day-to-day basis. And I think this episode does just that. I think it highlights the fact that poker can be a grind, right? It's not all glamour. It's not all the romance that it's cracked up to be sometimes when you see it on TV. I played for about 8.5 hours in these 2 sessions, and I swear I folded about 7 of those 8 hours. So you're just folding a lot and looking for good spots. And then sometimes when you find spots that you think are good, they turn out to be not so great, and you end up having to fold there as well, and it can be frustrating. So I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. This is not going to be the norm, so I definitely promise we're going to have some bigger hands coming up in future episodes, so stay tuned for that. If you guys like this, please do consider giving me a like, subscribing to the channel, and hitting the notification bell so you don't miss future episodes. And as far as results for these 2 sessions, I believe we were down 200 across both sessions, right around 200 for both sessions. I'll put the actual totals up here so you guys can see that. So not a great result, but again, that's the reality of poker. So just trying to keep things real with all of you, and I hope you guys appreciate that. So I will see you all in the next episode. Until then, good luck at the tables and be well. Take care.